I can guarantee you didn't know that Sombra, Genji, Hanzo, and Kiriko all originated from the same concept. I'll give you bonus points if you can tell me what character this is supposed to be. It takes roughly 13 to 14 devs to work on a single Overwatch hero. From hero design, concept art, animation to narrative, I wanted to delve deep into the DPS this time around and follow the process from conceptualization to the final game. Ashe was created as a villain for the Reunion animated short. They wanted to explore the deadlock gang Cassidy had previously been a part of, so they come up with the idea that the current leader would be a woman with a big brim hat, long duster, and a lever action rifle, and she would also have an Omnic that served as her bodyguard. They wanted to flesh out what an Omnic could even be in this universe, and they should be able to come in all different shapes and sizes. During the storyboarding process, they found that the character would usually come to the forefront of the scenes, realizing that there was something special about her, so they decided to fully flesh out her character and backstory. They produced several iterations of the character in order to hone in on a unique silhouette and color palette, taking inspirations from biker gangs, vampire hunters, and cowboys, as well as the anime Trigun. But they realized that a lot of these designs didn't really fit Overwatch, and they looked a little too similar to Reaper and Cassidy. I think the concept on the left definitely looks a lot like Cass, but honestly I really like it. Having a woman of color cowgirl would have been really cool, but with a little bit of tweaking it definitely could have worked, like in this fan edit. Anyways, at around the same time, Jeff Goodman and the game design team were interested in developing a new weapon focused damage hero, as the two other post-launch damage heroes they released, Sombra and Doomfist, were both ability focused. Upon seeing the early concept and storyboard art for the character, the designers independently came up with their own hero proposals, with the inclusion of Bob being one of the only universally agreed upon ideas. Ashe's kit revolved heavily around her rifle, the Viper, deciding that like Cassie's revolver, it would be an extremely powerful, highly personalized weapon. They gave it 2 firing modes, allowing her to rapidly fire from the hip for her primary fire, or to use the iron sights with a reload between each shot for her secondary fire. Ashe's dynamite was originally a cluster bomb, and it makes me wonder if Ashe's stadium power Out with a Bang used this concept and built it into Stadium. Bob was very technically challenging to implement because of memory and performance restrictions, and Ashe was almost scrapped because of it, because the team was so adamant about Bob being included as part of the hero. Unlike AI controlled turrets in the game, Bob is treated more like an additional teammate. It can be healed, buffed, and debuffed accordingly, and can also capture and contest objectives. For a time, the team experimented with having the game treat him as a full teammate, but ran into balance issues and bugs. Cassidy started out as Professor Logan. He was a concept designed by Chris Metzen as a cyborg cowboy considered for the original StarCraft. They then refined the design for a planned StarCraft game. The project was cancelled, but after Overwatch's development team took a liking to the design, it was recycled for a new character in the game, Cassidy. In their eyes, the design had everything they wanted in a playable character: strong personality, unique visual style, and memorable pop culture themes. Bastion was included as one of the final 20 designs to be featured on the main pitch for Prometheus. Conceived as a robot able to transform into a turret, artist Arnold Sang created many designs for Bastion, but the devs felt that they were too impersonal, that they didn't have much life or personality. Subsequent designs added Ganymede, a bird somewhat resembling a yellow northern cardinal, and they felt they'd immediately brought out a whimsical side of the character. Bastion somewhat comes from the Ranger class in Titan. The Ranger had a sniper rifle, an assault rifle, and a rifle that could transform into a turret. Bastion got the transforming rifle ability, while the assault and sniper rifles went to Soldier 76 and Widowmaker respectively. There was a period in development when Bastion was an ultimate generator, where it had many ultimates that ended up being passed on to other heroes. His original ult was a remote mine ability that can be driven like an RC car before burrowing into the ground. This was later changed to configuration tank because remote mine didn't feel like it fit the character. It is a similar mechanic used for Junkrat's Riptire though, and their burrow ability would later be given to Venture. Echo was initially named Iris, and was first conceived also for a pitch meeting for Prometheus. Her initial design was taken from unused Project Titan concept art, and she was one of the marquee heroes prominently featured in the Prometheus hero lineup art. In the original pitch deck, she had the following abilities: Particle Beam, Speed Boost, and Shield. We know she kept her Particle Beam, and that the Speed Boost was given to Lucio, but Echo with the Shield sounds like a nightmare honestly. The design was seen in the intro cinematic for Overwatch, where she was depicted as like a Cyclops Omnic. At one point, her focus beam came from her mouth, and this was taken from a concept from another Prometheus hero, Recluse. And it seems that the devs wanted her to have a boomerang attack that projected some kind of feather or laser from her wings, similar to something like Xayah's ultimate from League of Legends. And fun fact, she was supposed to be a supporter. Freya is still pretty new to the lineup, but it seems like her concept art goes back to the Prometheus days as well. The character on the left in the foreground seems to have a pretty similar design to Freya. The look of her coat seems to have carried over for the most part, as well as the crossbow being used as a primary weapon. This character was called Huntress, but internally Freya's codename was Winddasher. Genji and Hanzo were originally envisioned as a single cyborg ninja hero named Hanzo, who wielded both a bow and a sword, used parkour, and had an assassinate ability. During development, Hanzo was known as Bow Ninja and Genji as Sword Ninja. Both Genji and Hanzo's kits drew heavily from an early version of Sombra that predated both heroes. Sombra was originally going to throw kunais that would have revealed enemies' locations, which they ended up using for Hanzo's recon era. The first iteration of Genji was equipped with kunai, which were eventually given to Kiriko. Genji himself himself was originally conceived as a slow-moving stealth assassin with an ability that allowed him to trip an enemy, stunning them and then instantly kill them with a sword strike finishing move if another enemy didn't interrupt the attack. At one point, he was also given an ultimate that would allow him to instantly kill an enemy from behind, which would have unique stealth kill animations such as stabbing them in the back or cutting their throat, kinda similar to Spy in TF2. The lessons learned from this iteration of Genji were taken into consideration when developing Sombra as a stealth hacker, and another early version of Genji was treated purely as a melee hero, with the sword always being drawn and the ability to stick to walls, which we can see in this pre-release footage. Some of these abilities appear to be the basis for the Talon Assassin enemy unit that appears in the Overwatch Retribution event, and in early concepts we can see what a combined Hanzo and Genji character would have looked like. I honestly really like a lot of these cyborg designs, especially this one in the middle right. I hope we see that as a skin at some point, and the top left design is also really cool. It leans more into Hanzo, but I still think it's really cool. Junkrat went through numerous designs, beginning with a set of early concepts depicting him as a bulky robot, a cyborg, a mutant, and even an alien. The team then gravitated towards designs in which he wore heavy bomb disposal armor, but gradually peeled away the layers of armor to showcase more of his maniacal personality, eventually settling on a silhouette similar to his final incarnation. They explored several different flavors of this design with a variety of different possible origin stories, including one with military overtones and a version of him as a member of Los Muertos, but ultimately decided to make him one of the Junkers. Junkrat's original ultimate ability was a giant shoulder-mounted missile, but it was considered visually confusing during gameplay, and the Rip Tower was developed instead. As one of these early designs, we can see that Junkrat also could have been a person of color, even having a mustache at some point. We can also see the large shoulder-mounted missile that they referenced earlier, as well as a grenade-deploying forearm, which looks kinda similar to Hellboy's right hand of doom. I don't know if that's just me. Mei was announced in October 2015 at BlizzCon. She was one of the last heroes who was introduced to Overwatch prior to its actual release. The concept started from a desire to have a character use ice in the game's roster. This extended as far back as the original pitch for Overwatch, with the proposed character Frost, a fully masked figure with the winter coat, armed with an ice axe and able to generate ice patches and walls. Although this character was excluded from the final planned roster, the concept was revisited as a character named Frostbite, a Canadian mountaineer bounty hunter that would capture her targets in ice. While the dev team was excited by the idea, her design came across as too intimidating, and feeling the game had too many serious characters, redesigned her with a lighter tone in mind. Arnold Sang drew several drafts modifying the design, and game director Jeff Kaplan suggested making the character possibly Chinese, wanting to avoid nationalities stereotypically associated with chilly environments like Canada or Norway. Michael Chu, after considering her intended abilities, suggested making her a plucky, nerdy scientist kind of character that manipulated ice to get to hard to reach locations in the field. While Ben Sang was developing her equipment, she was originally armed with a large two-handed cannon. However, Sang felt her silhouette was too reminiscent of Zarya. Her weapon was revised to seem cobbled together and kind of handcrafted, and changed to a one-handed pistol, which not only made her silhouette unique, but also freed her other hand for abilities and gestures. A sentient drone, Snowball, was added to give her a fun sidekick to interact with, kind of like Ganymede with Bastion. Her personality was partially inspired by her voice actress. During a recording session after she messed up a line, she told both Shu and the sound designer, I'm sorry. Chu felt this was a great line for the character and added additional lines to portray Mei as apologetic, both sincerely and sarcastically. Additionally, the animator assigned to her, David Gibson, drew inspiration from characters such as Rapunzel and Giselle from the films Tangled and Enchanted respectively, namely their Disney princess vibe, but also their innocent and clumsy aspects that made you really want to spend time with them. Like many other characters, Pharah's design also comes from Titan. She appeared as a jetpack equipped class called Phoenix, which used a rocket launcher and an ability called Napalm. In the earliest version of Overwatch, the character was named Mercy, but the playtesters were confused when told to switch to Mercy, instead selecting the angel-themed character Angelica. To fix this issue, Angelica was renamed to Mercy, while the other character's name was changed to Rocket Dude. While early on they defined a playstyle and Egyptian heritage as integral to the character, a multitude of concepts were considered, ranging from armored dragons and heavily armored mech suits to stylized male fighter pilots. In particular, the devs noted that the fighter pilot didn't capture the fantasy the team was trying to display in Overwatch, while the heavy armor felt too tank-like, so they submitted a design consisting of a black armor suit with a large mag-fed rocket launcher. Prior to the development of Overwatch, Reaper was the name of one of the classes in Titan. He was envisioned dual-wielding shotguns and a magnum, and using the abilities Death Blossom and Shadow Walk. The class was reworked into the present-day Reaper, and as one of the first 3 characters designed for Overwatch alongside Tracer and Widowmaker. The character of Reaper was inspired entirely by the concept art for the game, and his actual character was developed after his appearance was already presented. Originally, he only had a single shotgun. The devs toyed around with concepts of Reaper having a grenade launcher, but the abandoned the idea, but hints of that early concept work did stick around. In his final design, Reaper wears bandoliers of grenade shells, and in the Overwatch announcement trailer, it features him using these weapons to attack Winston and Tracer. And there was also a time when Reaper would wield 2 SMGs, but the devs wanted him to use weapons that would feel heavier and more threatening, so they decided on shotguns instead. Sojourn was a part of the game's lore by 2014, and development on her as a hero began either that year or 2015 at the latest. Visually, the design for Sojourn took inspiration from Angela Bassett and Serena Williams. I can definitely feel the Angela Bassett inspiration. When they were designing Sojourn, the devs looked back at Overwatch and considered what archetypes were missing. They concluded that they needed a railgun type hero. The devs wanted to make a mid-range hero that rewarded accuracy but still made it fun to play at various skills and levels of gameplay. Initially, Sojourn's railgun functioned similarly to railguns in other FPS games, with lots of single, high-powered shots. This was kinda difficult to balance though, but the developers liked the gameplay, so they changed the gun to have a primary rapid-fire mode, with the single, high-powered shots relegated to its secondary fire. After the railgun was solidified, the devs began experimenting with Sojourn's other abilities. They wanted her mobility to reflect earlier FPS games with railguns in the past, and Sojourn's power slide was added early on. It was added because they wanted to add a vertical element to her kit to enable her to quickly access high ground vantage points and help solidify her role as a mobile damage hero. Originally, Sojourn's disruptor shot did massive damage to barriers, but the ability was finalized to complement her secondary fire. There was debate as to whether it would be thrown or come out of her wrist, akin to Pharah's wrist rocket ability. Sojourn had a few different ultimates before Overclock was settled on, and one of them was a massive railgun shot that could penetrate numerous obstacles. Overclock was designed to feel like a hit-scan version of Genji's Dragon Blade. Soldier's design was actually from a comic that Chris Metzen created in the late 90s, so when the team was looking for another hero to add to the roster, Metzen offered his old character and from there started to build Soldier 76. It was intentional by the devs to make Soldier play similarly to other FPSs like Call of Duty. They wanted to ease the player base into the world of Overwatch and wanted to use Soldier as the starting point. In his original lore, Chris Metzen envisioned Soldier 76 as just one of a line of American super soldiers that had been implanted with microchips to give them superhuman abilities. And in this version of his backstory, Soldier was thought to be killed in an assassination attempt, but instead found himself abandoned in South America with no memories of his past, only returning to the United States after a second civil war breaks out. Soldier's arsenal also saw a lot of changes, with this concept having him hold an SMG as well as the rifle, and early on it looks like they wanted him to have kind of a heavy pulse rifle railgun situation going on. I wonder if it would have been similar to Sojourn's railgun. Sombra actually originated as a character called Omniblade. She was a female ninja who would wield shuriken and kunai. As this concept was developed, a Mesoamerican theme was incorporated into her design, and she was given the new name Sombra. But this concept was shelved when they started putting elements of her kit into Hanzo and Genji. Later down the line, they came up with the idea of a stealth hacker hero and wanted to use the Sombra concept as its foundation. In this second iteration, they settled on Sombra being Mexican in origin and took inspiration from Aztec culture, giving her a headdress and glowing green spikes across her body. They felt like this was too similar to Omniblade, and a third one was made. Having previously tried to build Genji as a slow-moving stealth assassin and finding it to be unfun, they decided to make Sombra an agile infiltration hero focused on gathering intel and disrupting the enemy team, using her camo suit, hacking tendrils, and machine pistol, having the character lean to a more cyberpunk aesthetic, which we can definitely see in her concept art. Elements of this kit seemed to be from the Spec Ops class in Prometheus, which had stealth and EMP abilities, as well as Hivemind, who was also a hero in Prometheus, who had the abilities Disable and EMP Pulse. And at this point, Sombra had a hood and a longer coat, but her silhouette began to overlap with an in-development hero called Ana, so they decided to steer her into a different direction, eventually arriving at this final design. And originally, Sombra was invisible the entire time during gameplay, but this concept had two problems. It felt like Sombra wasn't really helping her team because you literally couldn't see what she was doing, and the enemies also didn't know if they were safe, so it just felt like they were constantly being watched or that they could be targeted by Sombra at any point. And it seems like she did start off as a support hero, and there was actually no cooldown for her hacking abilities either. Thank God they removed that. And before Sombra was released, Blizzard revealed a bunch of small hints to Sombra in the world of Overwatch, and it was made into an ARG, or alternate reality game. Quick pause, I started to record a summary of this ARG, but it is really long, and there's a lot of information, so if you would want to see a video about the Sombra ARG, please let me know and I will make it, because it does seem really interesting. Symmetra's design originated as a white woman called Architect, wearing a yellow dress, placing her left hand with the cybernetic arm. In the original pitch, she could deploy sentry turrets and shield generators. Later, she she was given orb buffs, which were ultimately given to Zenyatta. The concept went through several revisions before returning to the original design, and they renamed the character Symmetra, making her a woman of Indian descent. It's also implied that Symmetra is autistic, which is something they only alluded to in a tie-in comic until someone asked Jeff Kaplan directly, and he confirmed it in a later response. They noted that they didn't want to tokenize this, so they added subtle commentary to her endgame dialogue, expressing a desire for order and an aversion to overstimulation. They fleshed out this aspect further in 2022, giving her voice lines that referenced her heightened sensory input and behaviors that allowed her to stim.
Do you ever make snowflakes with your light?
Regularly. Their repetitive patterns bring peace to my mind.
When I don't replicate human behaviors, I am misunderstood. Are my algorithms insufficient?
You operate on a level inaccessible to others. I do not see that as a weakness.
Torbjorn's design also originated from Titan, specifically from the engineer class. He had a nail gun and sledgehammer, and had the abilities large sentry and teleporter. Early in the development of Overwatch, he was briefly named Ironclad, and was envisioned to have a grav hammer weapon and abilities named Slam and Bowling Ball. Torb was actually the first character who was modeled for the game. He served as a test for the Overwatch artists to perfect the game's art style. One of his early abilities was a trap that would fire a chain that hooked into the enemy player and kept them in a certain radius of the ability. Internally, it was kind of a thing that people either hated or loved, and it was eventually scrapped and replaced with armor pack, but we know that this concept was reused for Maga's ultimate. I think it'd be funny if we can see Torbjorn with a mini Maga ult as his ability again. The Jumper class from Titan served as the basis for Tracer, and Jumper was envisioned as wielding machine pistols and time bombs. In the lore, multiple Jumpers existed, and were tasked with using their tech to travel back in time and save the world. While the classes of Titan were player characters, the characters of Overwatch were intended to be distinct individuals. So Jumper was made female and given a backstory, and she was the first hero actually developed for the game. The first to be made, concepted, modeled, and implemented into the game. A few designs for her pulse bomb were made, looking more circular, and one even being just a box. We could see concepts of Tracer when they were originally supposed to be male, as well as a later stage in development where they made her female with blue hair. When they were dialing in the design for Tracer, she sported a red scarf and had more fighter pilot motifs. They wanted the scarf to act as a visual for players to track where Tracer was going as she zipped around. The scarf was removed, but the idea of visually showing Tracer's movement survived in the form of an energy ribbon when she blinks. Venture's internal development name was Miner. The concept was a hero who could dig underground, and the concept art was very experimental. They tried a lot of different ideas with Venture's drill, like sound-based weaponry and exosuits. The concepts were experimented with and combined to help make a more defined design. The narrative designer Miranda Moyer leaned Venture's identity towards a swashbuckling archaeologist, which had concept artists lean into this adventurer aesthetic, specifically to design them as a daring explorer with a big drill. While they were developing their look and trying to solidify the silhouette, other than the big drill, concept artists ended up giving Venture a big backpack and long coat to make them look unique to other heroes, while suiting the adventurer identity. When they were putting Venture's drill into 3D, the design was changed to a more cone-like shape, to make it more recognizable and better from a first-person perspective. From the first 3D drill, developers started to plot the moving parts and different states it would have, which led to the now moving drill mode and idle cannon. Their design was also inspired by motorcyclists, like the way they hold their drill, as well as the drill's look and loud noises. This is what led to the flame decals on their weapon, as well as flame tattoos on Venture's neck. And Venture is Overwatch's first trans non-binary hero, using they-them pronouns. The team gathered feedback and worked closely with the LGBT network at Blizzard, as well as gender non-conforming developers who were working on the hero, to try and best represent Venture's gender identity as authentically as possible. Widowmaker also stems from the Ranger class in Project Titan, who had a rifle that could turn into a turret, which was eventually designed into Widowmaker's rifle/SMG. In Prometheus, the class was named Longshot and wielded a sniper rifle and machine pistol with grappling hook and recon visor abilities. Longshot would appear in a later pitch with a new design, looking more closely to Widowmaker, and was also featured in the hero lineup art. Apparently, she was one of the easiest characters to animate in the game and was one of the first 3 characters designed for Overwatch, alongside Tracer and Reaper. Originally, her assault mode was the only assault hitscan type that didn't suffer from damage fall off, and her venom mine also created a much larger and deadlier explosion. If you got this far, I just want to say thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed, and please let me know what you want to see next on the channel. I read pretty much every comment, so I want to see what you guys want. I plan on covering the Sombra ARG next, as well as maybe a Hazard design deep dive with the Hazard voice actor, and the support role after that. So until next time, I'll see you guys later.